Is time travel possible? Does it already exist? Do intrepid travelers walk among us today? For decades, even centuries, the idea of time travel has offered unparalleled mystique and allure, and any claim that it's real can very quickly take the world by storm. This is Unveiled, and today we're taking a closer look at 25 time travel stories to make you question reality.
Do you need the big questions answered? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content.
In this video, we're covering the best, most convincing, most well-known, and most bizarre claims of time travel. So let's get into it. Number 25. 1860s iPhone. This picture has become a well-known piece of art, but mostly because of something in it that looks more than a little out of place. The painting, titled Die Erwartet, or The Expected One, and by the Austrian artist Ferdinand Georg Waldmüller, shows a young woman at the center of the image. She appears to be holding an object that's strangely similar to a modern smartphone. Take a look and let us know what you think. Art historians counter that she's merely holding a prayer book, with some suggesting a pocket watch. But the resemblance has sparked theories about anachronistic technology. The figure is clearly somewhat distracted by whatever it is she's holding, and seemingly completely unaware of another character in the foreground. Some claim there's even a phone screen-like light that illuminates the girl's face. Number 24. The Dodleston Messages. In 1984, when Ken Webster and his partner Debbie began renovating an 18th century cottage in an until then unknown English village, you may not have guessed that their story would become famous. However, when Ken reportedly borrowed an old-style BBC microcomputer from his work and brought it home, he quickly found himself embroiled in a long series of time messages. The Dodleston Messages are so named after Dodleston, the village in which they were received. They're a series of typed notes sent to Webster, mostly from someone known as Lucas, who claims to be from the year 1546. Among other things, Lucas commented on Ken's horseless cart, his car, and seemingly chastised him, Ken, for taking the house that he, Lucas, used to live in. Over the course of almost 2 years, multiple messages are said to have been exchanged, and at one stage, Ken is also said to have communicated with another figure through the same computer, this time a voice from the future, who claimed to be in the year 2109. Ultimately, Webster wrote about and published his story in the 1989 book, The Vertical Plane. Number 23. Charlie Chaplin's Extra. Although a silent movie icon first and foremost, Charlie Chaplin also has his own potential link to possible time travel. It's buried pretty deep in the actor's cinematic history and may have been missed by some, but ever since it was spotted, it's been a constant talking point for time travel sleuths. The key moment features during a bonus section on the DVD release of Chaplin's 1928 film The Circus. The footage is said to be from the premiere of the movie, and it shows what appears to be a woman talking on a mobile phone. The most popular counter-argument says that the woman was more likely hard of hearing and was using an early hearing aid device. She's clearly holding something up to the side of her head. What do you see? Number 22. Rudolph Fentz. Although he's at the center of one of the earliest widespread time travel claims of all time, the story of Rudolph Fentz is perhaps one of the sketchier examples out there. It typically goes that Fentz mysteriously appeared in Times Square, New York in the summer of 1951, but dressed more like he belonged in the late 1800s. It's said that he was spotted by a small number of people looking dazed and confused before he was unfortunately hit and killed by a passing car. After some investigation, it's alleged that it was revealed that the same Rudolph Fentz had disappeared without a trace in 1876. The sudden death of an unidentified man in the 1950s was supposedly proof of some kind of time slip between there and the 1870s. The problem is that the entire story has been largely written off as just an elaborate urban legend. A tall tale, but generally considered to be a work of fiction. However, there are those who continue to believe that it could be genuine, and proof not only of the existence of time travel, but of the dangers it carries as well. Number 21. Satoshi Nakamoto. In the ever-shady world of Bitcoin, perhaps it's no surprise that there's a rumored link to time travel. What we know is that in 2008, an individual or group going by the name Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper outlining the general concept of Bitcoin, a decentralized digital currency that has since garnered headlines the world over. What we don't know for certain, however, is who Nakamoto is, or indeed if they even exist at all. Nevertheless, there's some speculation that Nakamoto could be a time traveler, one who traveled from the future back to our present day to introduce a revolutionary technology. The argument goes that Bitcoin, when it did arrive, appeared as if out of nowhere, and that such a disruptive product can be better explained if we accept that it came from a time after now. For sure, it's a claim that isn't widely supported, although the notion that Nakamoto could be a group adds another interesting dimension to the theory, one in which time travel isn't just one AWOL renegade, but a clear, deliberate, and organized infiltration of the present day. Number 20. John Titor. Cast your minds back to the early days of the internet, and John Titor might be considered one of the first figures to go viral. During the early 2000s, various online forums were flooded with messages from an individual claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036, going first by timetraveler_0 and then John Titor. Titor claims to be U.S. military personnel who had originally been sent back even further in time to the 1970s to retrieve a specific IBM 5100 computer which he said was needed to fix technical issues in the future. His appearance in the 2000s was explained as a stopover on his way home. Over many months, Titor shared detailed information about future events, including claims of a coming civil war in America, and even posted a checklist and instructions for how to build his supposed time machine. Over time, his appearance has come to be dismissed as just an elaborate hoax, particularly as many of Titor's supposed predictions failed to come true. And yet his name remains one of the most famous ever to be connected to time travel. Number 19. Dimensional Warp Generator. In a case that drew a lot of parallels with John Titor at the time, Bob White, otherwise known as Tim Jones, and real name Robbie Todino, was the trigger for another internet-based time travel conspiracy between 2001 and 2003. It started when White posted a series of requests online, looking for someone to provide him with a dimensional warp generator, the reason being that he claims to need one in order to complete a time machine. The story got particularly strange, however, when many of those online responded, and some even set up stores from which you could purchase the generator and other parts. One person even reportedly charged large sums of money for time travel courses, seemingly as a way to vet White as the real deal. As it was revealed, however, the man behind the posts, again real name Robbie Todino, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia in the past, and that those seeking money from him had merely been preying on his state of mind. This one was less a case of leaving you to question reality and more to question humanity. Number 18. Paul Dionok's coma. Here, the question of time travel ties into debates around consciousness and the soul. In 1921, Paul Amadeus Dionok, a Swiss-Austrian teacher and otherwise ordinary guy, fell into a coma after suffering from encephalitis lethargica. His comatose state lasted for a year, but while he appeared unresponsive to doctors and visitors back then, he claims that during that time, he was actually transported to the body of another man called Andrew Northman in the year 3906. Dionok didn't immediately tell everyone this, but instead recorded all that had happened to him in his diary. Just a couple of years later, and Dionok's health was still bad. He moved to Italy in a bid to get well, but unfortunately died in 1924. Before then, though, he had given his diaries to a student, leaving them to him to translate, which he did, and Dionok's story became known. In general, the claims made by Dionok are at times criticized for being short on detail. Unlike with others, they aren't a long list of predictions that he made. Nevertheless, he does say in his diaries that those in 3906 realized that Andrew Northman's body was playing host to someone else's consciousness, his consciousness, suggesting that at this future time, such a situation would be much less surprising than it would be today. Number 17. Everyday chemistry. Theories on time travel vary in exactly the mechanics behind making it happen. But one of the most popular possibilities in recent times is surely through parallel universes, and in particular, the many worlds interpretation. Many worlds was first put forward in the 1950s by the U.S. physicist Hugh Everett III. In short, it suggests that every time any kind of decision or event occurs, Reality splits into two or many so that all possible outcomes of that decision or event are created. Say you could move across this now inevitable web of realities then, and you could quite easily find yourself not just at a different place, but also in a different time, along a different timeline. Some say that that's what may have happened to one James Richards, who claimed that in 2009 he stumbled into a parallel universe in which the iconic British rock band The Beatles never broke up. According to Richards, while in the parallel world, he spoke with someone named Jonas, and at the end of their meeting, he was able to steal a cassette tape containing a Beatles album that was never released. Not in this reality anyway. And having jumped back into this timeline, he hit the internet to tell the world. His claims are widely doubted. The album, apparently called Everyday Chemistry, includes many seeming mashups of other Beatles songs as well as past solo material from members of the band. But still, it's a story that opens up all new opportunities for potential time travel. Number 16. Time-traveling celebs. Given that celebrities are constantly photographed, it's perhaps unsurprising that their likenesses should be spotted in other images. But occasionally the similarities between today's famous people and random folks of the past is genuinely uncanny. Among the most well-known and convincing are the actress Jennifer Lawrence, who's said to look a lot like the 1960s and 70s Egyptian actress Zubaida Therwat. Keanu Reeves, who's been likened to the late 19th century, early 20th century French actor Paul Monet, and Nicolas Cage, who has been labeled by the internet as both a time traveler and a vampire due to his passing resemblance to a man in a US Civil War-era photograph. Shortly after that story broke in 2011, Cage even commented to deny his supposedly vampiric past. But what do you think? Are Nick Cage's counterclaims enough to convince you? Or is that just what he would say if he were a traveler? Clearly, these kinds of stories should be very much taken with a proverbial pinch of salt. But then again, they do look very alike. Number 15. The Philadelphia Experiment. Of all the alleged government cover-ups ever made, the Philadelphia Experiment surely goes down as one of the most bizarre. It takes us back to late October 1943, when it's said that the U.S. Navy conducted a monumental experiment in one of its shipyards to make an entire warship, a destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, completely disappear. In some versions of the event, the boat then suddenly showed up around 200 miles further south down the U.S. coastline, without any significant time gap between the sightings. Most of the story comes from the accounts of one Carl M. Allen, a merchant mariner who claimed to have witnessed the boat disappear as if into thin air in Philadelphia. And while Allen's recollections have mostly been written off as a hoax, elements of them have continually come under further scrutiny. For one, it's said that many of the crew on the Eldridge did suffer from unspecified mental conditions, seemingly as the result of tests they may have been put under. But for another, there's always been a little inexplicability around the impossible things. If the ship really was sighted 200 miles away, then that journey should have been traceable and should have taken hours. However, there are no records, and they're said to have been just minutes between the sightings. For some, the only explanation is time travel. Number 14. Lost and missing time. In ufology circles, the phenomenon of missing time or lost time is weird and widespread. In general, it's the name given to any period of time during an alleged UFO encounter, in which the person experiencing it loses all or almost all memory of what happened to them. After missing time, that person may well wake up in a wholly unknown place with no idea how they got there. Naturally, there are a number of possible explanations put forward, including that the person claiming a UFO was intoxicated or that they suffered some kind of brain injury. Failing that, and within the accounts themselves, missing time has also been linked to seeming extraterrestrial memory wipe devices. But if all that fails, then there's always the suggestion of time travel to fall back on. Whitley Strieber is an American writer predominantly known for the horror genre, but one of his most successful works came in 1987 when he published the non-fiction book Communion. A great deal of the alleged alien encounter it covers is underpinned by missing time, which has in the past led Strieber to highlight the potential for time travel as well. Number 13. The Chronovisor. Here we head right to the heart of the Catholic Church, for arguably the most famous time machine legend ever. The Chronovisor is a supposedly real-world device described by the Italian priest and scientist Pellegrino Ernetti. According to Ernetti, it was capable of viewing events from the past or future through a kind of television-like screen. Most famously, the chronovisor has allegedly been used to witness the actual crucifixion of Jesus Christ, as well as various other scenes from real-life ancient Rome. Significantly, the chronovisor no longer exists, as it was reportedly dismantled due to safety concerns sometime in the mid to late 20th century. One of the finer details surrounding its legend is that it was originally designed and built in part by the esteemed physicist Enrico Fermi, so the story goes. And given the power it's said to have granted its user, it's no stretch to say that the chronovisor could have changed the world. As a result, some believe that it may still be out there, just under seriously strict lock and key. But what's your verdict? Number 12. Flight to the Future. Sir Victor Goddard was a high-ranking and highly regarded figure in the British Royal Air Force, an all-around trusted voice, which is why his central role in not one but two apparently clairvoyant episodes is still so widely discussed by time traveler enthusiasts. First, in 1935, Goddard was flying an otherwise routine mission to inspect an airfield in Scotland. The then decommissioned airfield was fully expected to be empty and lifeless, but when Goddard flew over, he found it bustling with activity. A couple of key details were that some of the planes were painted yellow and that the servicemen working on them were wearing blue overalls. While this wasn't the norm at the time, yellow planes and blue uniforms would become the norm in later years, when Goddard's airfield also would be in use again. As a result, what the pilot saw that strange day in the mid-1930s is considered by many to have been a time slip. For the briefest of moments, he traveled forward in time and saw the literal future. Second, and this time Goddard was seemingly lucky to get out alive. In January 1946, he had been in China, due to fly to Japan later that same day. Before then, though, when speaking with his colleagues, he learned that another RAF officer had recently had a dream in which Goddard died in a plane crash. In the dream, the plane had been carrying Goddard plus 3 others, 2 men and a woman, and the crash had happened on a pebbled beach with mountains in the background. Then, just before flying to Tokyo, Goddard learned he would have 3 passengers, 2 men and a woman, and partway through the journey, the plane did crash on a pebbled beach with mountains in the background. The only difference was that thankfully, along this timeline at least, nobody died. Number 11. Time-traveling hipster. In 2010, a now famous photograph surfaced showing a man dressed in apparently modern clothing standing nonchalantly amidst a crowd in 1941 at the reopening of South Fork Bridge in Canada. Immediately, the man stands out thanks to his sunglasses and seemingly printed t-shirt. He's also holding a modern-looking camera. Some, therefore, have speculated that this photograph is solid proof of time travel in action, or of parallel universes momentarily intersecting. Ultimately, and upon further research, it seems that most of the seeming strangeness of the image can in fact be explained. Sunglasses of that style were available at the time, cameras of that size also had been released shortly before the date of the photo, and the printed t-shirt may actually be a knitted sweater linking to an ice hockey team of the time, the Montreal Maroons. Perhaps the hipster part of the man's more recent description is the most accurate then, because even if he isn't or wasn't a time traveler, he certainly bucks the trend for more formal fashion in the 40s, and he's already got his hands on some of the latest tech with the camera. Number 10. The Montauk Project. If you thought the Philadelphia experiment was already massive enough, consider that it's said to have been just one part of this, the wider initiative. The Montauk Project ranks as one of the most dramatic conspiracy theories in U.S. history, purely due to the sheer scale of what's alleged to have happened. It's a claimed series of secret government experiments conducted in Montauk at Camp Hero on Long Island, New York during the 1980s. The experiments supposedly involved mind control and teleportation, and were often held using unsuspecting subjects, including young children and homeless people taken from nearby. With time travel in particular, though, the centerpiece was a supposed time tunnel opened up during the project, possibly deep underground. The tunnel is described as having linked this reality and the present day to all other points in hyperspace, to the past and the future. Much of the mystique around Montauk has been created by a series of science fiction books written by Preston B. Nichols and Peter Moon, starting in the early 1990s. Nichols claims to have repressed memories of his involvement in the Montauk Project, as a subsequently brainwashed participant. In the modern day, whatever it was that happened or didn't happen at Camp Hero, it's had a surge in publicity in recent times as it also inspired the Netflix hit show Stranger Things. Number 9. Nikola Tesla. Think of the archetypal mad scientist character in books and films, and you soon realize that this man provided quite a lot of the inspiration for it. In his time, Tesla was something of a maverick and a showman, world-renowned for his crazy ideas, many of which worked. In the decades since, he's been shown to have been ahead of his time in many ways, and a pioneering inventor. But for some, his story goes beyond just being unconventional. His work in electromagnetism and the wireless transmission of energy in particular led many then and increasingly now to suggest Tesla was dabbling in time. Most of the rumors center on Wardenclyffe Tower, an unfinished communications tower built between 1901 and 1902, again on Long Island, New York. Much of what Tesla achieved at Wardenclyffe is unknown, although there have long been rumors of him experimenting by passing electrical energy through his own body, and in some cases, such shocks are said to have warped his sense of time and space. Ultimately, Tesla ran into a series of financial issues, many of his benefactors fell away, and Wardenclyffe was first abandoned and then demolished. It became known as Tesla's million-dollar mistake. But conspiracy theorists claim that it never really went wrong. Instead, it was shut down due to the power potential it had. Number 8. Håkan Nordqvist. In 2006, a Swedish man named Håkan Nordqvist claimed to have traveled back in time. His story became famous after a video was posted about it onto YouTube and was watched millions of times. In the years since, it has circled back into and out of public consciousness and has been shared across various other social media platforms. Nordqvist says that his brush with time travel happened during an otherwise routine day. Having noticed a leak in his kitchen, he set about fixing the pipes in the cupboard under the sink. Only the cupboard transformed into something like a wormhole, which he freely walked through. On the other side, he met an older version of himself, complete with matching tattoo, before returning back to the present day. Luckily, he also had the presence of mind to film the encounter on his phone. Now, in this case, the strength of the story is considerably damaged, as it was later revealed to have been part of an elaborate marketing campaign for a Swedish pension fund. However, there are those who simply refuse to accept that, claiming that the pension explanation is a cover-up, and Nordqvist is the real deal. Number 7. Bold Street, Liverpool. At first glance, Bold Street in Liverpool in the UK is a thriving hub in the city that famously produced the Beatles, a place where shoppers and diners, tourists and locals all mingle together. Unlike with the mystery of everyday chemistry, however, the Fab Four aren't directly linked to this, Liverpool's second major claim to time travel. Over the years, there have been multiple stories about supposed time slips occurring along this particular road. Unsuspecting people are busily going about their day when suddenly everything changes and they're transported, usually backwards, through time. One woman reportedly witnessed her surroundings instantly change into something akin to the 1950s, complete with old-style cars and with everyone around her dressed in the fashion of that era. Meanwhile, another oft-repeated story says that an off-duty police officer once entered a bookshop along Bold Street, only to find that it had momentarily altered to become a mid-20th century clothing store. Number 6. Ronald Mallett's Time Machine. Perhaps the one thing that lets many a time travel allegation down is that the one making it is rarely sure exactly how their experience happened. With Montauk, there's the hazy notion of a time tunnel. In the life of Nikola Tesla, there's his unknowable work in Wardenclyffe Tower. But then, every so often, there is a seemingly more concrete proposal for a true time machine, and very occasionally, it threatens to enter the mainstream. That's the case with the plans and prototypes of the University of Connecticut professor Ronald Mallett. Mallett has dedicated his career to researching the potential for time travel, establishing himself as a national expert on black holes and general relativity. Starting in the year 2000, he brought his astrophysical know-how back down to Earth in a big way, suggesting that a real time machine could be built using ring lasers, continuously circulating cylinders of light. Arranged in such a way, Mallett believes that the energy produced should distort gravity enough to make it possible to move back through time. To date, while his ideas have received coverage, There is not yet a working mallet machine in public use, but could it be that his ideas will one day make time travel possible? Number 5. The Vanishing Hotel. If you like your holidays to have a little bit of possible time travel thrown in for good measure, then France is seemingly the place to go. And French hotels are the accommodation type you should choose. First, there's the age-old urban legend of the vanishing lady in Paris. And then there's perhaps the much more convincing tale of two couples on a European road trip in 1979. Over the years, there have been many different versions of the story of the vanishing lady. But in general, it's said that two women, usually told as mother and daughter, traveled to the French capital for the Paris Exposition of either 1889 or 1900. Upon arriving, the mother is taken ill, and so the daughter checks her into a hotel and leaves to find medicine. Only when she returns, her mother and her mother's room have disappeared, and no one in the hotel has any recollection of ever having met either of them. While not directly time travel related, there are seeming links between it and another now infamous story many decades later. In the late 70s, it's said that two British couples embarked on a road trip from the UK through France and into Spain. During the French leg of their journey, however, they stopped off at a hotel, accessed down an old-world cobbled street. Their one-night stay is said to have been good, but the main takeaway was just how old-fashioned the place was. The decor, the food, even the other guests, all seems to be a throwback to a bygone age. And it was an incredibly cheap place when it came to settling the bill as well. Upon leaving, the couples posed for a photo outside the hotel and went on their way. Fast forward a few days, and they're making their way back home from Spain, again through France and on to the UK. They decide to stay at the same French hotel and are sure they drive to the same location. Everything else is unchanged, but the hotel itself is no longer there. It has seemingly vanished, and none of the locals that the couples ask know anything about it either. The final mystery is that, a couple of weeks after returning home, the holidaymakers received their photographs back from the developers. They had taken 3 outside the hotel shortly before they left, but all 3 come back faulty, and the hotel can't be seen in any of them. In the time since, the so-called vanishing or phantom hotel has been put forward as an example of time displacement. It was there, and then it was gone, perhaps as timelines and eras briefly overlapped. Number 4. Project Pegasus. If time travel does exist, then many believe that it goes right to the very top of world governments. And in Project Pegasus, we have probably the most famous claim ever made that not only are time travelers, or chrononauts, real, but that at least one former US president is one of them. One Andrew Basiago is the leading voice behind the Pegasus story. He claims to have been part of a highly classified US program that ran through the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. It allegedly involved teleportation and time travel, as well as wider-reaching applications for such technology, including long-distance space travel. Basiago says that the initiative was run by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, and that he was just a child when he participated. He says that most of it was built around what was known as the jump room, from which people could dematerialize to rematerialize somewhere else and in some time else. Easily the most bizarre aspect of Basiago's claims, though, is that he says that ex-President Barack Obama was part of Pegasus too. Back then, Obama reportedly went by the name Barry and was even sent to Mars on multiple occasions, all via the jump room. The White House has, unsurprisingly, denied that any of that is true. Number 3. Future bombs. If you were to unexpectedly find yourself propelled into the future, you might at least expect to be taken to a place you'd want to be at, or to somewhere where you weren't in immediate danger. But that wasn't the case in 1932, when a German reporter, J. Bernard Hutton, and photographer, Joachim Brandt, traveled to a shipyard in Hamburg. So it goes, the pair were quietly researching an otherwise routine story when, wholly unexpectedly, bombs started raining down all around them. Out of nowhere, the shipyard was under attack, and their normal day had been turned into a nightmarish hellscape. Their journalistic instincts didn't fail them, though, as they snapped a few photos before hurriedly escaping. The problem was that nobody believed what had happened to them, and there had been no other witnesses. What's more, when looking at their photos afterwards, Hutton and Brandt found that, inexplicably, they didn't capture anything of the bombing. For more than a decade, it went entirely unexplained. But then, in 1943, in the midst of the Second World War, the same Hamburg shipyard actually was attacked. And when the story was covered in various newspapers, Hutton claimed that the pictures were exactly as he already had seen them all those years ago. Number 2. Andrew Carlson. As with so many other time travel stories, the details around this one are both difficult to pin down and widely debated. For many, the tale of Andrew Carlson is the product of hearsay only. But for some, it's one of the surest examples of a time traveler on Earth that we've ever seen. It's said that in 2003, an individual named Andrew Carlson was arrested for insider trading after making a long series of incredibly accurate stock market predictions, all of which resulted in him making massive financial gains over just a couple of days. In most versions of the story, Carlson managed to turn an $800 initial investment into $350 million with ease. During his interrogation, it's claimed that Carlson revealed his true identity as a time traveler from the future, explaining that he knew what to back simply because the patterns of our present-day stock market were, to him, ancient history. He then bargained for his freedom by giving the authorities details about his future life, as well as key information for the here and now. Supposedly, the only thing that he wouldn't reveal was how to make the time machine that had sent him here. Nevertheless, after his bail was reportedly posted, Carlson never showed up at court and was never seen again. Number 1. The Moberly-Jourdan Incident. Clearly, France has quite the history of reported brushes with time travel, but none strikes quite as mysteriously as what happened on August 10, 1901, to Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdan. The pair of respected Oxford academics were paying a visit to the Palace of Versailles in France. The trip was as planned until they decided to explore the gardens and apparently fell backwards in time. Both reported a sudden feeling of unease, and shortly afterwards, both came to have witnessed scenes and people which and who they believed to be not of the present day. They estimated the characters they encountered to be from around the late 18th century, about 120 years in the past. One figure in particular, a lady said to be sketching in the middle of a cut lawn, was even deemed to be Marie Antoinette. Upon returning to the UK, Moberly and Jourdan didn't immediately speak to each other about what had happened to them. But after a couple of weeks, they opted to write down their accounts and compare notes. These notes were then published under pseudonyms in the 1911 book, An Adventure. And while some explain away what happened to them as perhaps a shared hallucination, it remains one of the most intriguing examples of unexplained time travel phenomena on record. So what do you think? Which of these stories, examples, ideas, and theories are you most on board with? And which, if any, do you suspect could be false? Let us know in the comments. And if you've ever had a time travel experience of your own, then be sure to tell us all about that as well.
What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from Unveiled, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for our latest content.